Good morning. I love to hear all the chatter. That means that there's networking happening and conversations to be had, but gonna have you wrap it up if you're okay with that, because we have tons of great content for you today. So thank you for joining this morning's keynote and then our session today. My name is Ashley Ligori, and I'm a corporate giving representative at Excel Energy, and I serve on the Be Civic Summit Committee. So thank you for being here, for giving your time, for giving your expertise, and being willing to learn and to share. So I am thrilled to introduce this session, Igniting Impact, Reimagining Corporate Giving and Volunteerism. It's the work that I do, so I'm so excited to hear how you pick it apart, how you think about things differently, and how you implement new ideas. So thanks so much for being willing to share. Would love to introduce our speakers and then give you the stage. So Rebecca Holliday is the Director of Impact at Groundswell. Her professional experience cuts across the private, public, and nonprofit sectors at both local and global giving levels. She's focused on partnerships, policy, strategy, program design, and implementation. And then also Seth Wharton joins us here as Chief of Staff at SERVPRO Team Olson. I'm located right here in Colorado, so welcome. But he leads the 6 territories in the US and 2 in Canada for SERVPRO Team Olson. He's been instrumental in creating community, cohesion, and a sense of belonging across all those territories. Also an active member of Team Olson Philanthropic Giving Team, where he influences the company giving strategies and projects in meaningful and profound ways. So as a reminder, all of these workshops are going to be recorded, and all of the information is going to be accessible to you after this. So we hope that you have questions throughout the program, and then also we'll have a dedicated Q&A afterwards. And then don't forget to share what you're learning on social, tag Be Civic, share your learnings, and we're just so proud that you're here. So welcome, so look forward to learning from you.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. I thought we'd have some competition with Kevin upstairs, so we're honored that you decided to come to this session. I just want to take a second to dig in a little bit about our backgrounds. I know Ashley just introduced ourselves, but I think it's really helpful in our field in social impact, sustainability, CSR, whatever, is sort of like, how do we get to where we are? I think that's really helpful. So maybe Seth, you could just dig in a little bit more on your background, even your prior roles at SERVPRO, and then what that role is today.
Sure, thank you. Who knows SERVPRO? Does anybody? Okay, that's good. Big green trucks, it's easy to, once you see them, you see them everywhere. But so SERVPRO is, we're all independently owned and operated franchises, but we are international at this point, disaster response. So anything bad that happens in a home or business, we are there. I started at SERVPRO in 2010. I had just moved cross-country from Boston, moved to Colorado, didn't know anybody, didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live, found a job on Craigslist as a technician, making, I think at that point, 5 times less than I made in Boston, but it was an opportunity to be involved in the community that I just moved to. So started as a technician. We were really, really small. There were about 10 of us in the company, and we owned the Boulder territory, and we did a lot of meaningful work in that community. Fast forward to now, I've had many roles within the company. I've been director of operations. I've been general manager of the Colorado office. Now we are about 300 strong, which is not a huge company, but we operate in Washington, D.C., in Toronto, in Austin, Houston, Indianapolis, and here in Colorado.
Great. And just to share a little bit more about my background, I'm at Groundswell, which is a corporate giving and volunteerism platform. So it's a technology company first and foremost, but with a focus on having an impact in the world. But I have a background in the government. I worked at the State Department and USAID in Washington, D.C., and then overseas. And then I also did CSR at Chevron, so working on human rights and other sort of social performance challenges, partnering with business units in places like Bangladesh and Kazakhstan and Nigeria. So really sort of partnering at the business level, but also thinking about the ways in which impacts, how the business is impacting the communities that they were operating in, which was, never a dull moment for sure in that time. And then I moved over to the nonprofit sector. So I worked on the innovation team at CARE, a large international nonprofit focusing on empowering women and girls. So I like to think that, the sort of, those experiences have brought me to Groundswell, which is sort of the intersection of nonprofits and companies and how to have a greater impact on the world. So anyway, that's us. And today, I think we'll dig a little bit more into SERVPRO and Team Olson. Seth's gonna give us a sense of the before, or at least the sort of the history of their approach to corporate philanthropy. And then we'll talk about how the partnership with Groundswell has sort of expanded their impact and their ability to engage and include employees in the sort of corporate philanthropy strategy. We'll talk a bit about volunteerism, and then what's working, but also we really want to dig into some of the challenges that Seth and his team are facing, what I'm seeing in this space, and really I think that's going to be a good segue into some Q&A from you all to hopefully share and hear. So maybe not just questions, but even folks offering their own perspective and kind of ideas around in this space. Because I think whether you call it a corporate matching program or giving or volunteerism, it's not new, it's not novel, but I think participation rates and levels are stubbornly low, and I think we're all trying to figure out how to kind of crack that code. All right, so I know, Seth, you already talked to us a little bit about SERVPRO, but would love to hear, a little bit more about, kind of your mission, your purpose, and anything more you want to share about to ground us in who you all are.
Definitely, yeah. So as I mentioned, we are all franchises. There are about 1,800, 1,900 SERVPRO franchises. We are very fortunate. We've had some pretty good opportunities over the years, and we are the #1 SERVPRO franchise in the country. And our owners, Eric and Casey Olson, they're our age. They're my age, and I think we all kind of grew up together. And we're still just trying to navigate how we were shaping this company, but foundationally, from the start, there's been the spirit of giving. We have a very simple and easy to remember mission, and that's make today better. And it's not SERVPRO corporates, it's our brand. And we chose those words very intentionally. Make implies action. Today is the here and now, and better is, we are showing up when something has happened in the community that was unexpected, and it's not a good situation. And within the make today better, the 3 words we ask people to remember, we kind of break it down further. We make today better for our clients, our community, our team, ourselves. And, I think that if we're trying right now to understand, as we're looking at, okay, make today better for client, make today better for team, make today better for self, make today better for community, where do we have like that unifying, because our unifying purpose is to make today better, but the community piece is something we're really trying to focus on. Our work is making today better for the community, but what does that mean for somebody who's just started? What does that mean for somebody who, sends out invoices? What does that mean for somebody on the sales side? And so, while we at kind of the executive side have this unifying goal and purpose of, we know when we look in the mirror, we say SERVPRO Team Olson, make today better, but we're trying to dig into a little bit more on that. So who we are, right, is this team of individuals that's grown up together. We start in the, people start in the field, they join management, they work on the executive side. Now, we have this giving piece, this philanthropic piece, we have this partnership. We're just trying to figure out a little bit more on who we are. So it's a tough, I can't just answer who is SERVPRO Team Olson. Well, we do work, right? We're a company that does work in the community, but I think our why, we're really trying to explore a little bit more last year into this year.
And can you just say a little bit more about the the industry itself, the seasonality, and I know we have a picture here that kind of gives a glimpse of it, but if someone doesn't know at all what SERVPRO is, what does it mean to show up and support people in the community?
Hopefully you've never had one of our trucks in front of your homes or businesses. If you have, hopefully SERVPRO or somebody was there to make it better. But yes, so we are, SERVPRO as an industry started a lifetime ago cleaning carpets. They have transitioned into trying to become kind of the nationwide leader in commercial recovery, commercial disaster response. So we are active in cleanups after hurricanes, after wildfires. If you live in Colorado, I'm sure you've seen us around from all the natural disasters that we've experienced here. There is some seasonality in our industry. Because we own a few different territories around the country, the seasonality doesn't impact us as much, but certainly, there's not hurricanes in Colorado yet. That might happen, but there's also not wildfires in Washington, D.C. So we are diverse in kind of our service lines throughout the country. And then, I think within our industry, we're a service industry, so we do have a mix of, more blue-collar industry workers, more administrative, and then, of course, the support of kind of a professional services group. But we're a diverse company in that aspect.
Great, yeah. And so I think, I know you talked a little bit about, this journey of figuring out who you are, sort of your place in the community, both through the business itself, but then, broader philanthropy. Can you talk to us a little bit about, especially sort of the background of the leadership commitment to philanthropy, to giving back, and what it looked like maybe, a couple years ago in terms of from your perch, on more of an operations role?
Yeah, definitely. So the very first exposure I had to Eric and Casey's vision was my first year here. So I arrived in Colorado in June 2010, and that Thanksgiving, I didn't know anybody, I didn't have friends, I don't really have much family, and Casey gave me a little gift basket for Thanksgiving that had socks and had all these other little things, and she, we were a small team, we didn't really know each other, but she went out of her way to kind of give some sort of sense of family or home to me. And, fast forward a few years later, we start to partnership with Louisville Community Food Share, because that's where our office was originally. So we did a few events. We knew kind of behind the scenes that there was some giving that happened from the ownership, but we didn't know specifics. It's not something that they talked about. And again, thinking back on my journey, starting, in technician, running, general manager of the Colorado office, and then as we expanded more into this operations role, I started to dig into the financials, and I started to see that we were in fact giving. And so I approached our treasurer at the time, who respected the owner's privacy and said, that's a royalty, don't worry about it. And I wasn't worried about it, but I wanted to know more. So I talked to the CEO, Eric, and he was like, oh yeah, we meet every month as a giving committee, and we identify charities and organizations that, causes that are important to us, and we actually charge each one of our franchises a royalty. And it's based on revenue, it's not based on profit. And so I approached and I said, well, that's great that you all donate to causes that are important to you, but you have two voices, and I want a seat at the table. And I approached it a little more diplomatically than that, but it was semi-forceful, saying I will have a seat at the table, you decide when. And, we really wanted to dig into what mattered to the team, not just mattered to the ownership group. And so there was nothing formal. There was no formal, the team, I was, within the top 5 ranked employees in the company, and I had no idea. And so the ownership they really fundamentally didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want anybody to know that they were giving this significant amount of money. We right now are giving around $1 million a year to local organizations, but we have some pretty lofty goals on what we want to give, and their concern is publicizing what they give, especially if we're just looking at money. So one of the things we talked about very early on is they are active in the communities with their children. They're always out volunteering. Could we discuss that piece as well as a company to really, okay, if you're not going to share the financials with every employee, that's okay. We don't have a matching program, a gifting program, that's okay. But what do we have? We have some stories. So we started to tell the stories, and then as we started to tell some stories, the ownership group became more open to a partnership on a matching program. So that's kind of how we've evolved in the few years, is just by pushing them a little bit out of their comfort zone, because they're humble. They don't want people to, think that we're misaligned in any way. I think at the time had to really look at each other and say, are we concerned in sharing how much we donate because we're concerned about somebody not making a livable wage? And somebody saying, you donated $1 million that year, maybe just split that up between the employees. And so we had to really look at each other and dig in and say, are we paying everyone not just fairly, but more than fairly, so that this isn't going to be met with conflict. We call it creative tension, but we certainly didn't want to give the impression that we were giving away potential bonuses or anything like that, because particularly in a service industry, particularly when people are successful based on overtime and service calls, and our field workers make up about 65% of the company, and they're, some are entry level, and if they see that the ownership group are giving away $1 million a year, we really needed to make sure we were asking ourselves the right questions. So that was a critical piece before we entered into any more official program, any match program. It was really important to ask that question. So I wanted to call that out.
That's great. And hopefully during the Q&A, if anyone else, has encountered those sorts of tensions, it'd be great to hear. I mean, I think what's so striking is the sort of, many companies want the impact team to, gather the data and tell that story and get it out in the world, right? There's a lot of pressure to do that. And I think that's in many ways the opposite here. So I think, finding that balance of being proud and communicating that commitment to giving back, but doing it in a way that is at a comfort level for your leadership as well. So that's a tension. Well, I think Seth has teed it up nicely to say, we've got, Groundswell entering the picture, and I think providing Seth and his team a way to bring more employees into the fold, right? It's not just those 5 kind of leadership level individuals or that giving committee, but really kind of, as we like to say at Groundswell, democratizing and decentralizing corporate philanthropy. So, and I'll give Seth a chance in a moment to explain, how he came to find Groundswell and what he felt was compelling about what we have to offer. But I'll just sort of take a second to ground everyone in what Groundswell is. We're a relatively new company. We've been around for about 2 years. A technology platform to basically facilitate donations to nonprofits, and the vast majority of the users on our platform are employees of companies that we're partnering with. So, very much has all of the features of the donation matching capabilities. We've also, in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, been building out a pretty robust volunteerism component as well, to be able to put volunteer events in front of employees for them to sign up, and you can track. The big thing that we're excited about at Groundswell is that we're mobile first, so it's an app. I think we believe that it's important to meet employees where they are, and especially a younger generation who are, frankly, always on their phones, right? And so, and thinking about when are people motivated or inspired to donate, it's not just when they're behind their desk, logged into the SharePoint site or the company portal. It may be, when they're in transit or home, listening to the news, or over the weekend, when something terrible happens in the world. And so we wanted to make the platform very much one that could be accessed no matter where you are. So it's mobile first. We are building out a web version because not everyone loves mobile, as we've learned. And so we're building out a companion web application. But yeah, and then the other kind of I'd say, interesting piece of what we've built is that it's technically a donor-advised fund. And how many of you know what a donor-advised fund is? Yeah, I'd imagine in our space. But so that it's essentially a tax-advantaged giving account. We like to call it sort of like a 401k for giving. And like a 401k, an employee, if they leave the company, they can take that Groundswell account with them. So they can retain that history of their donations. They can continue to use it for their own personal philanthropy, and then the account can get reassociated with another company when they move somewhere else. So we're excited and so grateful for partners like Seth and SERVPRO who've been with us from the very early days. Seth, I will say, is like one of our power users, both as an employee just donating, but also as a program administrator in the portal, and always never shy to give us feedback about what we could be doing better. So Seth, I'm going to turn it back to you. How did you find Groundswell, and what were you looking for, again, sort of in that very long journey that you've had at SERVPRO and really pushing leadership to include others in giving? What was sort of attractive about Groundswell for you?
Yeah, thanks. So I actually heard about Groundswell from the current founder, his previous organization. So for those of you who might know the name Jake Wood, also an ESPY winner, call out to upstairs, but he founded Team Rubicon, I think in 2010, after a devastating earthquake in Haiti hit. Jake, former Marine, got on the phone, started to talk to his former teammates, and was just confronted with this hopelessness, this feeling that they had resources and talent, but they couldn't figure out how to actually get on the ground and help. Fast forward to Team Rubicon, we at SERVPRO were seeing that organization on every natural disaster we mobilized to. I think, they raised $400 million for their organization. They put tens of thousands of people, former servicemen and women, back into service, so to speak, through Groundswell. And so I saw a post, thank you, Team Rubicon. I saw a post at one point from Jake that said he was, leaving Team Rubicon to start Groundswell in order to kind of take that same level of service into the public workspace, not just being able to connect servicemen and women into their communities, but being able to just engage at a different level. And so I signed up immediately for the beta and waited. And, I was sending emails, and I was pushing, again, kind of how I did with the Giving Committee. I was asking for a seat at the table because I saw that Groundswell was truly like trying to put giving into the hands of the employees, and not just, it wasn't an app to make money. It wasn't, it was just something that truly like checked the boxes for us, because we have, like I said, around 300 employees. 100 or so have to have a go bag at their front door with at least a month of clothes and whatever else, and they have to be within an hour of an airport at any time. And they get on a plane and they might be gone for 6 months. And that's that. That's what we do, right? We respond. And so we were seeing in all of these disasters we've responded to over the years, there's so much good that happens in the community. There's so many organizations and causes that are built from that direct action in the community, but so often it takes a lot of time for a donation. If it's a financial donation, not time, it takes so long to get the money into the hands of the organization to actually use the money during the event. And so, we might see, okay, there's, a Red Cross truck next to the church we're working on. Great, we could donate to the Red Cross, but, will it actually go to that local chapter, or will it take, months for that money to be deposited if we have, more traditional corporate matching or giving programs? So really, Groundswell checked the box for us because it was like real-time giving where we could respond. We're already out. We're already out there in the worst of times, and now being able to have a tool that could really, match, and I use that word intentionally, but match our needs. So that's where Groundswell came into the picture, and we started to, I think, kind of grow up together a little bit and figure out how a company like SERVPRO really could use the technology for good.
It's great, yeah. And I think, again, the mobile app, it feels like it's a perfect fit for the type of employees and the work that y'all do. So that's great.
And just one more thing about it. Calling back to my earlier comment on trying to figure out what matters to our employees, we didn't really know. We know that our employees donate a piece of themselves every time we go out to these. When you have that bag packed and you go say goodbye to your spouse for 6 months, or your dog, or whatever it is, your fish. But we didn't really know what mattered aside from we're out there serving the community. And the piece about Groundswell that really mattered to me was seeing what mattered to our team. And that, it maintains anonymity, which is important. So I can't say that, Seth donated to, Save the Puppies $100 on this day, but I can see that there has been a donation to that organization. So that breach in confidentiality happens a lot with giving, and I think we'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but that, from my perspective, really mattered. I wanted to know what mattered to our employees, if anything at all. So that was another piece that when I saw, the kind of the first video about Groundswell, I pinned that for later. I said, I want to know more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, especially when the history of that, or in the giving in your company was so kind of centralized there with, you said Casey and Eric are wonderful people, but they probably care about things different from, even from you probably, right? So I think that's important. All right. I want to get a chance to just talk a little bit about volunteerism. We currently aren't partnering with SERVPRO on the volunteerism component, although I think you're going to be one of our early partners to also go on that journey. But I know you touched on it a little bit before, but I know you've had some recent activations and would love to hear, how that's gone, what's worked maybe and what hasn't. I know, like many of us, you're closer to the team here in the Denver area, but you've got a number of locations. So how do you kind of activate, involve employees, especially when it's not like you have a full, big, social impact CSR team dedicated to kind of, executing on volunteerism?
Yeah, we don't have a team. It happens organically, and I think we're trying to figure out a better approach right now. But let's just say one of our employees, now knowing the giving team, now that knowing there is a committee that meets, that, contributes to our community, now we have Groundswell, so now the team knows this is happening and they can see some of the activity. Now we're having some of our teammates be a lot more comfortable approaching us with events in the community. And so in the years past, we might just say, hey, there's an event in Colorado happening. It's at the community food share. There are 50 seats available. Who wants to come join us? And we wouldn't have a lot of participation outside of the senior leadership, because I think there is a sense of obligation if you're in that role, which I don't think is always, I don't think it should always come from them. So, we've really been encouraging our kind of lower level leadership to approach this giving team with opportunities for volunteerism in their communities. And so recently, there's an organization called Core Giving that so Blackstone owns SERVPRO, and we were introduced to Core Giving through a Blackstone representative. But Core Giving's mission is pretty simple. They want to end hunger. That's their mission. It's simple. And they were organizing an event globally, but it happened to be in every one of the communities that we have offices in. And so, we circulated an email around from the executive team first saying, hey, there's a great opportunity to sign up. Please do so. Not a lot of activity. Then there was another email that I sent that was, hey, here are the links to sign up. Please do so. Still some activity, but not a lot more. We then had somebody who is, and this might not have been the best approach, and I think maybe in the Q&A we can talk about some of these successes, but we have one of our teammates runs this Blackstone concierge program and has people throughout the country that work for her, and she put the ask out there saying, hey, our client is going to be at each one of these events, please attend. We had 100% of that team sign up. And so it was really interesting to see, it was a bit, it was an approach we haven't really taken before to look at an opportunity to give our time through the lens of maybe our client is going to be there. And I think that depending on who you ask, there can be a difference of opinion on if that's the right approach. I was just happy that we were out volunteering. That was I checked my box. But, we do need to look at the motivations, I think, for big volunteer events. We don't want to discourage it. And if someone's there to connect with a client, wonderful. But we certainly were not there to take pictures. We were there to do meaningful work, and we did. We did meaningful work, and now we're starting to see more of those teammates who happened to go because a client was going to be there. Now they're approaching us saying, hey, I saw this other event in San Antonio. I saw this, other event in Washington, D.C. Do we think we can have some participation? So we're still trying to figure out right now, we don't want to fly executives around the country to volunteer. That doesn't make a lot of sense financially. But what does make sense right now, I think, is we're starting to get this, this kind of groundswell of change with our team, where they're starting to see these in-person volunteer events. It's a few hours, what their impact can be on the community. So I think our approach is evolving right now. We're still trying to understand. We have long-standing relationships. The executive team they actively participate in volunteerism, but at this local level, at our regional offices in Washington, D.C., in Austin, in Houston, Indianapolis, we are encouraging our teammates now to bring opportunities to us, and we don't really care what it is. We're going to, if it matters to our employees, we're going to support it, whether that's time, treasure, or talent. So there's a way in which we're now, by exposing the team to the good of an event like that, I think it's helped. I would not have picked that event myself because for reasons. Okay, so very quickly, so I've been operations focused my whole career. And sometimes it's difficult to be on the sidelines of an operation and not be directing traffic. I want to be block and tackle. I want to figure out, okay, there's an inefficiency in this corporate giving event, so I'm going to solve it. So it's a little tricky for me to do these big events, but I need to let go and let these organizations run their organizations. But that's why I wouldn't have picked it myself. But seeing the positive impact it's had in that one little community event, we did create a little bit of content around it. We shared it publicly, which we've never really done before. Not never really, we've never shared any content about volunteerism or giving, period, at our company. And this time we did, and it started within our ranks, started to have a little bit of virality just on LinkedIn, and I think that it's important for us to tell that story, but we're just trying to be, diplomatic and sensitive to the privacy of the ownership.
That's great. I love talking to Seth because his background isn't purely social impact or nonprofit or CSR, because I think that perspective is like so valuable and frankly like healthy for this space that we all inhabit. And I think, we have talked about this a little bit as you're on this journey, what does skills-based volunteering look like for SERVPRO? Because that may be the best angle where you could still go to a food pantry or food bank that needs support, but maybe the best support is not you guys just standing in a line packing and sorting food boxes, but going down into the warehouse and talking to their logistics manager and talking about their own supply chain or the inventory and all that stuff, because that's core to your business, and that's probably what a lot of your employees, you might feel a greater connection to what impact is. So I know that we'll put our heads together on some more of that. But yeah, I think when we get the Q&A, would really love to hear folks' perspective on volunteerism. Groundswell didn't build out the volunteerism component initially. As Seth mentioned, our CEO, Jake, ran Team Rubicon for 10 years, which is a volunteer-led organization. So the volunteerism is core to what he knows, but he also has seen corporate volunteerism to be a little bit performative, or also just like it's very difficult to find that match where company will bring its employees and it's the right fit and truly value add for the nonprofits. So we felt like we weren't sure what our role in that would be, but we are at least building out the tools and the technology to help the Seths of the world at least sort of rally the employees, figure out who's going, schedule the events. But that execution piece and finding the right nonprofit that is the best for your company and your values, I think is a tricky one. I know Mary from Give to Get wasn't able to come today. She was going to be here in the audience, and I was going to call on her. But that's what they do is really roll up their sleeves and help partner with companies to execute events. Okay, I want to keep an eye on time. I've been checking I just want to leave plenty of time for Q&A, but we have like 2 more slides. One is, let's just talk a little bit about what's going well. That's the fun one. We talked a little bit before about this notion of decentralizing the giving and letting employees make the choice about where they want to donate. I'll explain this statistic, but it's, and it may have even changed since I last looked it up, but, 76% of all donations made by SERVPRO employees have been made to unique nonprofits. So that means there's a lot of diversity there in across the employee base and what the type of nonprofits or causes they care about. Do you want to say a little bit more about that, Seth?
Yeah, so Groundswell makes it pretty easy as possible, for a company like us to create a matching program. So we created this matching program, and right off the bat, we just said, and I created it while driving. I have a little camper van, and I was driving to our Washington, D.C. office with my partner and our dogs in the back, and my girlfriend was driving the van. I was in the passenger seat launching the matching program because there was a looming hurricane hitting the coast, and we wanted to be in front of it. And so we created this matching program right away, $500 for any employee, any cause, anytime, we will match their donations. And so again, with this concept of what matters to our employees, where is the money going, where are the contributions going, and we thought right away that we would see, just knowing our employee base, we would see some similarities in the donations. But to Rebecca's point, there were 2 organizations that had duplicate donations. One was World Central Kitchen, if anybody knows about that, and number 2 was Team Rubicon. So those were the only 2 duplicates within the first few months of our donations. Everything else was a unique organization. And so that piece, then fills in the coloring book of where the types of organizations those were going to. Children and youth, ministry, animal welfare, social justice. So we started to then see the full picture of what mattered to our employees. So the uniquity of those donations, it was really interesting for us to dig in. I'm a data guy, operations, to dig into the data of where that was going. Again, I couldn't see who donated to what, but I could certainly see what was donated to. So that piece was crucial for our kind of, I think, using Groundswell as a tool for good, because it proved the concept to the executive team.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump to that. I know we talked a little bit about privacy already, but data. So you have it at your fingertips. Maybe it's less of a best practice, but more of a, maybe we're going to talk about on the next slide actually on opportunities. But because you haven't been doing that storytelling as much, and I think you're starting to internally, but when the time comes, you'll at least have the tools to do it and the data points and some of those things to bring color to those stories. So I don't know if there's any more you want to say on the data piece, or the way in which that's on the portal. But
no, I mean, I think I do want to talk about maybe the toolkits briefly. So once a month, as we're trying to figure out our best practices, we now have a partner who does a lot of the hard work for us. So there are, an infinite amount of daily, weekly, monthly, annual causes. We could donate to World Rabies Awareness if we wanted to, but there are, at least some pillars that I think everyone in this room probably knows. But for us, we're fairly new to the space, so being able to have this toolkit come to our inbox once a month that just shows this is the highlighted organization, cause. These are organizations doing good work, and here's ways in which you can communicate this to your team has been super influential. So I just wanted to call that out. Yeah.
Thanks.
There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes for us to have that tool.
It's always great to get that feedback. And someone up today about Veterans Day, which is coming up. So. And
if you do want to do a World Rabies Awareness Day, we can talk.
Okay, we'll talk. Great. Okay, so I'm mindful of time. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about a few other best practices that I'm seeing and working with other customers across the space. I think, one is around being able to be responsive during moments that matter or emergent events. I think the easier ones are the hurricanes and the fires. Not easy, it's devastating, but there's no question about a call to action around donations, and you can usually have photos of what's going on the ground and stories of those who've been impacted, and that could be either here in the United States or globally, just depending on the company makeup and footprint, there tends to be more attention and resources flowing to natural disasters here in the United States. But certainly we saw a lot of people spring into action around, let's say, the earthquake in Morocco. But what we've done is try to build tools to help companies engage quickly. So to set up a campaign, we always put up our own sort of curated, we call them spotlights. So essentially it's here's what's going on in Hurricane X, and here are nonprofits that we know are already on the ground responding that you can donate to. So we always put that up, but then there's ways in which companies can create their own. There was a company that is in the food and beverage industry. So for the Maui fires, they didn't want to just give to the, sort of the more common nonprofits that were there responding to the disaster, but they wanted to give to organizations that were supporting the food and beverage industry in Maui, or in Hawaii, that were impacted. So they created their own sort of curated list. So anyway, I think, we've had customers come to us in the wake of the conflict in Israel and now in Gaza to say, we don't know what to say, but they have been able to at least say to their employees, you can go on Groundswell, you can donate, to I don't want to say like which side, but you can donate to an organization that is important to you. So we've, again, that sort of like choice and that decision that it's not just like the company writing the big check to the one organization, but instead letting the employees make a donation. And then, we also want to make giving fun, right? And it not just be necessarily at the end of the year or around Giving Tuesday, but, with the app and with some other fun tools that we have a lottery wheel that some of our customers use. They spin this sort of like, they put all the employee names in this like list that like spins on a screen, and then it lands on one person's name, and then they get $25 into their Groundswell account. And like, people get really excited about this. They like, bang the table and cheer, and it's money for nonprofits. It's to give away, but people get really excited about that. I guess it's maybe sort of a gamification of it, but that, I think there's just different ways to pull people in. And then, as I mentioned, we're building out a volunteerism structure that we're trying to make it inclusive and accessible. And so again, that mobile app being a really important part of that, both for people just to go to events and be able to quickly check in and log their hours, but also now in today's sort of the new normal of where work happens, right? We're not all at a headquarters necessarily. Some companies are back, but many are at least hybrid, and many are in fact fully remote. And how do you include employees in that, and sort of also decentralize volunteer events, if that makes sense? So, setting up, opportunities at a regional level, or even remote volunteerism opportunities, of which I think there is much more of that now that emerged from some creativity and innovation during the pandemic. All right, I'm checking time one more time. Okay, yeah, we got a few minutes to talk about opportunities for improvement, AKA challenges, and then I want to open up to Q&A, and I'll voice over one that's not listed here that we talked about. We can build on the storytelling piece. But yeah, Seth, I know you love Groundswell. I know you've been excited to empower employees and decentralize and include more of the SERVPRO team in corporate philanthropy, but what's been challenging?
Yeah, it's certainly, so during COVID, Rebecca and I were talking about it earlier, but during COVID, we were an essential company. We had essential workers doing essential work. We also acknowledged that there were elevated risks to our staff. So we went out of our way to protect, personal protective equipment and tests, and we actually doubled everyone's pay. We quadrupled everyone's sick time. We took a lot of steps to protect in every sense of the word. But we also took an approach where the ownership group just said, we're going to give every employee $500 on a gift card to give to somebody that needs it. And we thought we were doing something noble and just saying, here's, $500 times 300 employees is not a small number. It's not insignificant. And we had a bunch of employees come to us and say, well, I need it. And I think we've had a similar reaction to some, maybe 20% of our staff have looked at Groundswell and this matching program that SERVPRO has started with through a similar lens of just saying, you're matching $500 to an organization that, what about me? And I think that that's an interesting thing that we didn't really think about. I guess we thought that there might be some, I'll say, creative tension again, but we didn't expect it to, like, the virality of that conversation. And it's a blind spot to us as we're new to this space, as we had never really talked about it. We didn't do any studies. We didn't talk to big organizations doing this. We kind of always just pave the path and do our own thing. And so with launching Groundswell, again, we saw this similarity where some of our staff members almost took it as, well, that $500, I'm not going to give, I don't have $500 to give me $500. And so that's one, I guess, blind spot we had. But for the most part, we've had a fairly positive response. You know, people are now understanding a little bit more about our why, and we work so hard and we do so much because the harder we work, the more we give. But I do think that there was a bit of a blind spot when we first kicked off this matching program of the why not me piece. So I'd encourage whatever you do in this room to think about how people would react at these various companies to a situation like that, because we were blind to it, and if we can help other people not be blind to it, that, you know, that means a lot for me.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're at 10 minutes, so, and I know we already talked a little bit about that external storytelling piece, so maybe I'll just segue here into Q&A. Love any and all questions or observations, or even just any of your own ideas on some of the things that we've talked about.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Maureen McDonald from Health One. I was just wondering if you could talk about motivating employees to share their volunteer hours, if that's part of Groundswell, those tracking of the hours, and how we believe that many of our employees are volunteering, but only a small percentage of them are actually getting online to share that information, even though they can earn these cards, like what you gave to people to give to their charity of choice. It's still a tough one for us, and I'm wondering if anybody in the room has comments on that, or if you do.
Yeah, I'll start, but then would love other thoughts. So again, part of our we've taken our time to build out this piece, right? And to get that feedback. So a couple things is trying to make it as easy as possible in the app, right? Boop, boop, boop. And I think also working with customers to reduce friction. So if you don't, you know, some companies want to see someone upload proof of the volunteer event or a photo. And that's fine for some that want to do that, but we've encouraged them to not require that, and in the spirit of just making it easier and reducing that friction. There's also, we've built out components where like a team leader could log hours on behalf of other employees. So, and that's when it's a company-sponsored event. But I think what you're getting at too is this so much other volunteerism just is happening, you know, outside of work, on the weekends, and how do you capture that? And we haven't figured it out, but I think trying to, you know, again, delineate, you know, the type of volunteer hours it is. We have created a dollars for doers type of component where maybe that can motivate someone to, you know, put in those 2 hours and get $40 into their account to maybe donate back to that charity. So do you guys track, or are you tracking hours, or you're just trying to get people to volunteer?
Trying to get people to volunteer.
Yeah. Anyone else on that topic, or a new topic? Yeah. Where did Ashley go?
Another question?
It's really just more of a comment. I'm Laura Fitch, and I'm with Advent Health. Hello, Maureen, across the room there. Just a thought, we have a program within Centura Health, which, you know, Advent Health, where we allow employees to donate back to funds that help support other employees. So maybe if you'd made one of your options associate giving or something like that, it would be a little bit more legwork on your part to have those employees apply for that, or you know, share their story of why they need that $500. But that just might be another option for you to encourage more giving from your people.
Thank you. Yeah.
Another question?
Hi, I'm Morgan Seibel with WeCycle, and when you say you're trying to get employees to volunteer, I'm wondering if that's like on their personal time that you're trying to get them to volunteer, or if it's during work time, and if like you're paying people when they're volunteering.
Yeah, and hello to WeCycle. We've worked together for years. Yes, we are actively encouraging any time to be tracked so that we can pay. We don't want that to be a barrier. If, you know, we don't want anybody to use PTO to volunteer. So we have a few options. We have just volunteer days, Or we just say it's kind of comp time. If you volunteer 8 hours on a Tuesday, great. We'll pay you for it, and we don't really need to talk about it or log it. That's just part of working here. So that's a good question, yeah. We're still trying to find ways, but I think that if we can eliminate the barrier of pay, that goes a long way.
Hi, Courtney Leeson-Hope with the Community Impact Fund, formerly with Otter Cares Foundation as the Employee Engagement Manager for OtterBox. So happy to be a resource. We had quite a robust program. Seth, been staring at you. You came to almost buy my rocking chair a couple weeks ago in Fort Collins. I've been trying to figure it out, and you started talking about your dogs and your things. So nice to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Excited to hear about your company.
It's a very nice chair if anybody wants it. Yeah, it's very comfortable. Yeah.
I love that you talked about that tension between taking care of your employees and taking care of the community. I think that's huge. I'm curious, not to put you on the spot, when you heard that feedback around, I need the $500, and speaking a little bit to Laura, did you take that feedback and create like an employee assistant program, or are you still working on that piece as you're coming alongside of your community? Because that's the space I work in right now, so I'm curious about that.
Yeah, great question. We heard it loud and clear, and we have we have an easy way that an employee who's struggling can come to us. We have set aside, so within our giving fund, we have set aside a certain amount of revenue annually, and it's just our employee pool. Somebody gets in a car accident and they can't afford the deductible, if their child has emergency dental, whatever it is, we don't really put any restrictions on it. We say, if you need help, come to us, and we have a few different ways we can help. We can carry someone's loan if they're, going from purchasing a house to selling a house and they need a, bridge loan for 30 days. We have all these different ways where we're trying. Where we're not trying is making that public, because it's tricky. It's tricky to open that up, because then if every employee, we're small now, we're only 300 people. We're on pace to have a pretty successful year, but we're not done growing. We intend on being probably 3,500 to 5,000 strong within the next few years. And, if all of a sudden we open up, the ownership's pockets to everything, it becomes a full-time job for a few people to navigate that. So I'm certainly open if anybody wants to connect after this. I'm certainly open to hear some strategies that might work, because we're trying to figure it out. We have given about $250,000 this year to our employees with no questions asked. But again, if we're all of a sudden for 5,000 employees, that's a full-time job for a few people. So maybe we just pay people more. I don't know. I would love to know what people are doing to get some answers and some insight. So thank you for the question. And it's a very nice chair if anybody's in Fort Collins. And it's still, it's okay. Got it. Yeah.
We probably have time for 2 more questions. One here, and then is there anyone else who wants to ask before? Okay, we'll start with you.
All right, great. Thank you both. I'm Clint Huey with Snooze Eatery. We're looking to increase engagement as well and try to find new ways we can get our snoozers active in our communities and kind of involving and volunteering. We're very curious about implementing a matching program, and I'm just curious if you can give any insight or best practices around budgeting for that, like really not knowing what level, how many people will participate and so forth. And so, yeah, any recommendations on how to budget for that?
Yeah, well, I can send you a budget calculator that we've created, which actually kind of allows you to toggle across a lot of different, like not only how many might enroll in a matching program, but then, what does that sort of match utilization look like? And depending on the size of the company, the amount you might want to match, et cetera. So you can kind of play around with that. I think, historically, just participation in company-sponsored match programs has hovered around like 10%, which is pretty low. I think a lot of companies, the budget that they have for a match program is not at what 100% utilization would be, right? There's just an assumption that not everyone is going to do it. It's, same with y'all, right? And it's a tension actually when we talk to customers, because we think that using Groundswell is easier and people can take advantage of it. You can connect a banking source really easily on your app, and then people are like, wait, but how many people will actually use it then? And do we have the money for that, right? So I think, I'm happy to chat with you after this to kind of unpack the size of the company, et cetera. I think that also if are you starting from scratch, that means probably the uptake will be slower, whereas if you're just maybe transitioning to a new platform and you've had a long history of a match program that people are used to and they expect and they do utilize, you have some data points there to kind of build off of. So that's not really a great answer, but I think there's so many variables there, but happy to partner with you on that. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, one more, I think.
Lauren Sadler with McKinstry. Hi, Rebecca, Seth, thank you so much. Rebecca, this is kind of more directed towards you. Obviously, employee buy-in and consensus around giving is crucial to just have that engagement. At the same time, how do you kind of balance that tension between these are nonprofits that align with our values, these are the nonprofits and organizations that are providing real impact in our communities, while still keeping employees engaged in terms of the mission?
I think I understand your question. So it's the idea of employees can donate anywhere, but how do you keep it aligned with your company values?
Right, in terms of your platform, kind of how do you create those guardrails?
Yeah, so, we currently obviously scrub our data set for hate groups that are recognized by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I am daily checking there is an immense amount of nonprofit fraud out there, I'll tell you. So we're working to make sure we remove all of those. We do believe, part of our sort of value prop has been that choice, but then companies come to us and say, but we are focused on health, education, and economic development. Those were Chevron's 3 pillars, which I've, seared into my brain. We only want our employees to donate to those because that's part of our core, that's in alignment with our corporate strategy. And I believe the answer is a yes and, right? So because there are tools in Groundswell to customize that sort of landing page or the top of that feed on the app, you can put your own corporate spotlight that it kind of elevates the nonprofits that are in greater alignment with your organization, or you can do, more communications around those. We haven't done this yet, but we, are in conversations with some companies that want us to put more explicit guardrails in place to remove, big chunks of sort of categories, right? Some companies don't want their employees to donate to, universities and colleges, right? Or, many don't want their employees to donate to religious organizations. So we've certainly been, we've built out the capability to do that. We still are a proponent of, wouldn't it be valuable to know what your employees care about, and then let that maybe inform your broader corporate strategy and those pillars, right? Insofar as so many companies say that our employees are so important to us, and, it's a part of our kind of corporate fabric. So again, I'm giving another sort of not half answer here. It's a tension, but we're trying to give companies the tools to kind of thread that needle, and then if need be, we can also put in more kind of explicit guardrails.
Well, thank you. Can everyone join me in a round of applause to thank our speakers, Seth and Rebecca? Yeah. I hope you are all inspired by and to think differently.